Hey everyone, David here, and I've got some exciting news to share. I've decided to write a book, and I've entitled it Psychosocial Hazards Are Real. The book is intended to help clarify the fact that psychological safety cannot be achieved without paying attention to the psychosocial hazards people are being exposed to. Despite how much individuals might be interested in treating others with kindness, dignity, and respect, many cultures are so full of psychosocial traps that no psychological health and safety effort can ultimately succeed. But to address psychosocial hazards, you first have to know what they are, and you have to have some idea what to do to address them. Though the book won't be 100% complete until the spring of 2025, I'd like to share a unique opportunity to reserve a copy during the book presale campaign. The campaign will run from September 16th to October 18th, 2024. This will be an opportunity to get one of the first copies of the book, tickets to the book launch event, and other opportunities to learn more about psychosocial hazards. For more information, you can go to my personal LinkedIn or Facebook page, or the LinkedIn, Facebook, or webpage for ID2 Solutions. Don't miss out on this unique opportunity. Now, back to this episode of the podcast. Despite the lack of a requirement in the United States to do so, there are companies and organizations that are exploring ways to address the changing landscape of workplace mental health from an occupational health and safety perspective. We'll have a conversation with a representative of one of those innovative companies up next on this episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. From Flourish DX, this is the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. As workplace mental health has become a global priority, there's a greater focus on addressing psychosocial hazards. Each week, we look at psychological safety from an occupational health and safety perspective. Let's talk psychological health and safety. Well, welcome to this week's Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. I'm your host, Dr. I. David Daniels, and I want to thank you for tuning in. Each week, we seek to increase awareness of the importance of psychological health and safety by learning from the lived experiences, research, and expertise of our guests, as well as advocating strategies to reduce harm and minimize vulnerability to psychosocial hazards in the American workplace. So the state of mental health in the construction industry is concerning, with mental health struggles emerging as one of the most deadly dangers. Studies reveal that over 5,000 male construction workers die by suicide annually, a rate 5 times higher than other work-related injuries. This alarming statistic highlights a crisis that has only recently gained public attention. Anxiety, depression, and substance use are prevalent amongst construction workers, exacerbated by high-stress environments, long hours, and job insecurity. Despite growing awareness, mental health issues remain undiagnosed, undertreated, with fewer than 5% of construction workers seeking professional help. Efforts to address this crisis include mental health first aid training and suicide prevention initiatives, but implementing these measures can sometimes face challenges as well. So in this episode, we're going to talk to someone who's in the construction industry who has an approach. Again, we were having a little bit of conversation before I push record. This is not about finding the perfect, it's going to solve all of our problems type approach, but we've figured out that there's something going on. We know a little bit about it. We know enough to know it's an issue, and we want to do something about it, not just talk about it. So it's an honor to be able to have this conversation about workplace mental health in the construction industry. And we're going to start this episode, like I start most of them, with an introduction of my guest, by my guest, with this question: who is Rob Luce?
David, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation for quite a while. So I've worked with you at the National Safety Council on committees and things like that, and part of the delegates group. And so I've admired your example and the things you talk about and your bold approach to bringing up topics like this that we need to start paying more attention to. I've been in health and safety, safety professional since 2003, 2002, somewhere around there. I was working for Kimberly-Clark Corporation in Paris, Texas, and that's where I cut my teeth in safety. My entry to safety was through HR. So I was kind of an accidental safety professional, but took to it and had opportunity to serve in healthcare, in the nursing home sector and long-term care sector for a short period of time, and then went back to manufacturing, and I worked for a contractor out of Augusta, Georgia that provided temp labor to a multitude of different manufacturing companies, and served as their officer over safety for about 12 years. And then eventually moved out to Utah, where I joined a construction firm, and I'm the HR and safety director out here, and I have learned a lot about what you just introed with. There's a growing concern, and the key word is growing. It's not going away. I think mental health and suicide is either the fourth or fifth leading cause of fatalities in construction right now. And I think it represents about 5 or 6% of fatalities in construction. Construction represents it's the business sector in America that has the highest rate of fatalities. So that's concerning, and we're putting more and more construction workers out there. We're building. America's booming. We're especially out here in the Intermountain West, along these mountain ranges. We're growing communities and doing a lot of construction. So this is definitely a concern that needs to be addressed. Got to pay attention to it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, so as we dig a little bit more into those and other issues, I do have one other question that this is actually standard. This is the one thing that I ask every single person who comes on the podcast. The question is, what does psychological health and safety mean to you? When you hear that, what do you think about?
Well, I think it's the new landscape of safety that we have to pay attention to. I mean, for a while there, when OSHA came around, it was let's name the hazards, let's classify them, let's create laws around them. There was a point in time where we started into the Z tables, and we were talking about chemicals and kind of unseen hazards that will hurt you over a long period of time. And then we moved into the era of, well, what can OSHA do to serve you? And we got into VPP, and there's kind of been these cycles, and each one's made a difference. And now we're getting to the point where OSHA's starting to question, well, what's the next big thing that's going to make a difference? And so, when you talk about psychological safety, to me, it's there. It's present with everybody to a higher degree with some people than others. Some people are more affected by it, but it's just the constant backdrop of safety, I think, and we have to start looking at this landscape and doing something about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's dig a little bit deeper. You said that you talked about coming into your safety role, and we'll talk a little bit more about safety as well, but into your safety role through the HR space. I relate. Actually, my graduate degree's in HR, not because I was wanting to be a benefit specialist or do, any of that kind of stuff. I wanted to do safety and didn't want to be an engineer. So, my observation is and was that a lot of organizations, if they don't have a specific person to be responsible for safety, they tend to look at HR because it kind of looks like a people thing. So, so how did you come upon this involvement in construction, though? I mean, so what is it about construction that drew you that you found out that it was something that you were really interested in?
Yeah. Well, so I don't know if it was something that I was interested in and then I pursued it. I had some good friends that ran a construction company, and um, just I've been where I was at for a long time. I loved where I was at, but my family was growing. I've got two older kids. One was going to college, the other one's almost in college, and my wife and I were eyeballing that empty nester period. And we're like, we gotta celebrate. What do we want to do? I mean, what do we want to do? We're still young. We gotta figure this out. And we're like, we wanted to snow ski. So I called up my buddies in construction, and they're like, yeah, we need a safety guy and an HR guy. I'm like, I'm a double package. And it worked out. Moved out here, and I entered construction. My background is manufacturing. There's a lot of similarities, David. I mean, a lot of similarities. We use subcontractors. We use subs of subs. We have, electricity is electricity is electricity, whether you're, working from heights. I know there's an OSHA standard for general industry, an OSHA standard for construction, but they both kind of come from the same place. And I see more similarities than differences. And I've really come to love construction. I'll be honest with you. Particularly we're a general contractor, stout building contractors, and the guys that are our superintendents out in the field, that they're the quarterback of our projects, and their job is hard. Oh my goodness. They at any given time, they're having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subcontractors coming and going, trying to complete a scope of work, long hours. Sometimes they're shorthanded. They don't have the supplies, but yet there is a schedule. There is a promise to get that project done at a certain time. And I've found that instead of discussing mental health or psychological safety, or using those terms, you know what they really understand? You know what term really resonates with them? Pressure. Pressure. That's a palatable word for them. Mental health or psychological safety is not a palatable word to them, but when you articulate it as pressure, oh, they understand that. And it's synonymous, I believe.
Right. No, I what I hear you saying is that you're trying to meet people where they are. That's what I hear you saying. And with all these topics, it is really important, at least in my view, if we want to share a message, that the message be shared in a manner that the receiver gets, not the sender. I get there's some things I'm really good at. There's some things I'm horrible at as well, but the things that I'm good at, if I want to get the other person interested, involved, concerned to think about it, I have to communicate it in a way that they'll get it, in a language that they'll understand, in a language that resonates with them. And we don't have to, hit all the high points and get all the technical points down, because ultimately this stuff is about how people feel about this stuff. And people recognize the feeling of pressure. And it is absolutely synonymous. They get that. They absolutely, absolutely get that. Something that you said sparked a question for me. This is a bit off on a rabbit trail here, but bear with me. Um, wh- why is it we don't have? Why is it that we have to have a separate standard for construction and one for general industry? I mean, what's your thought? I mean, just again, not this is not to be official one way or another, but it just crossed my mind. I hadn't even really thought about it. By going like, why is it that a company has to monitor two different things when, and a lot of the information is actually the same anyway. But go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, if you're going to fall 4 feet or 6 feet, I mean, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt. I don't know why they did that. That is a great question, David. And there is separate. Some of them are the same, but there's still the construction version and the general industry version, and maybe it's that, in manufacturing you can probably engineer out the work from height problem, but in construction you're going to have to work from height at some point. I mean, you build up, and 2, 3, 4, 50 stories. You have, or more, and that's my only explanation for it. I'm sure at some point back in the OSHA history, at some point they decided to make that specific standard for construction, and I would love to go back in time and be a fly on the wall and see what their reasoning was and how.
Something we used to talk about. So I'm originally from the state of Washington. It's a state plant state, and the difference
Washington
between
State.
yes, absolutely.
I went to high school in Washington State.
Look at that, amazing. Well, another similarity here. There were horizontal standards that apply to everybody, then verticals. And I mean, and again, this question, I guess it just popped in my head. So there's maritime, agriculture, and construction have side standards, and then you got general industry for everybody else. And there's a part of me that just wonders, well, why? But again, I mean, it's a
Hazard's a hazard. Right?
Exactly. That's the point. And again, to your point, gravity is gravity everywhere. And if you fall, particularly, matter of fact, if you fall from standing with enough, velocity, it's still going to hurt. It doesn't really matter. So sometimes these silos have created these uber complicated, kinds of compliance procedures that it's a hazard. And if we approached the world from a hazard perspective, so the hazard is X, can we eliminate it? Well, no. Can we substitute for something that's less hazardous? Well, no. Can we engineer out the problem? Can we have an administrative control? Can we get some PPE to protect you from it? It doesn't matter exactly. It doesn't matter what the hazard is. It matters that we manage it, because some of them you can't eliminate. And again, if you're going to build things, you're going to go up high at some point. That's just the way it works. And so, yeah, these are kind of the think tank conversations that, I certainly love having, because I think in some cases we, as a society, have created solutions to problems 40 or 50 years ago, and we still kind of use them today. Nobody really knows why. We just do it. Why? Because we're in service of the people who did this 60 years ago.
Do you need more psych health and safety in your life? Then head over to the FlourishDX Academy for several free on-demand e-learning courses. If you're an internal professional, follow FlourishDX on Eventbrite to register for any of our free fortnightly interactive webinars. Our flagship professional practice program is also exclusively available for internal professionals. The 12-week course blends theory, applied practice, and interaction with other professionals through live lectures and a monthly community of practice session. Find out more about all these learning opportunities or inquire about a bespoke in-house training at the FlourishDX Academy. www.45003.org. Now back to this episode.
So one other in digging into the background a little bit. So you said that you came into safety through HR. Was there a particular situation, instance, particular job, particular scenario that caused you to get really interested in safety?
Oh man, I am going to confess right now. So I'm just going to throw it out there, okay? To the Reverend, I didn't really. When they assigned me, I was moved to Paris, Texas from Beach Island, South Carolina. It's a Kimberly-Clark plant, and they're like, "Hey, welcome to this HR gig you got. You're going to be in charge of safety for our plant." And I'm like, "Oh." I was a young guy. I'm like, "What do you do with that?" I had no idea. I started at zero. And, they sent me to classes. I had a good mentor. Doug was his name. Anyway, he came and he started. I'm like, wow, there's a lot to this. I spent a good time just learning and keeping my mouth shut and just learning the ropes. But I'll tell you, there was one instance where we had a group of maintenance guys from both sides of the plant that got together. It was a room of like 50 people. And, these are all tough guys. They're the mechanics, the electricians. These are the tough guys, And we're sitting in there, and they didn't want to be there for a meeting. They're complaining, and we watched the Charlie Moorcraft story about he tells a story about how he had to go. He was an oil worker. He was on his way home from, and he got a call that there was an emergency. Anyway, he has this compelling story, and I've seen his story 5 or 6 times. I've seen him live. Tell the story a couple times. But I was in there watching. I was watching Charlie and paying attention, but I was watching the room also. And Charlie's story, the way he tells it, it just grabs you and pulls you in, and you feel so bad. His message just resonates. And I looked around the room, and I'm like, oh my gosh, a few of these guys are crying. There's tears. And there's the letter of the law, then there's I got the spirit of the law. I'm like, this safety thing is important. It wasn't until that moment where I'm like, I get the importance of it. It finally hit me. It was that moment, David.
Wow. Yeah. And this is I'm sure you've heard it in our C conversations, the kind of the accidental safety person, the person who didn't really go into be a safety. To be quite honest, I didn't know that safety was a profession until, seriously, I didn't know there were professional safety people. I came across it through the fire rescue service. And I'd been on the job for a year and a half when I saw my first colleague die on the job. And something just seemed kind of wrong with that. And then in my first 14 years, there were 9 of them. And it seems like something seems wrong with this. This idea that we're supposed to get on a fire truck and go to somebody's house on fire and 3 of us don't get to come back. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And frankly, the people in the house are already outside waiting on us when we got there. So it didn't really make a lot of sense. And as I was kind of transitioning, out of full-time fire rescue service, I found out there's actually a whole group of people who do safety stuff all the time. And I go, I found my tribe. I found this is a thing, but again, connected to the story that you just shared. Safety is not so much about the things that we do. It's about how those things cause people to feel. There's a difference between doing safety things and feeling safe. And it's a feeling. So those big, burly, tough kind of guys, there's something that connected with them that caused them to feel, that human emotion. Crying is a really, really important emotional release for all of us. It is. And sometimes people don't do it enough, particularly men who are told that, men are actually value cultured, at least in this society, that the only emotion we get to show is anger. So everything comes out in anger. And the more that we start to find out that it is okay to cry, it is okay to, sometimes you're depressed, sometimes you're anxious. There's and it doesn't have to be an anger thing. It's just, I'm feeling a little depressed about this particular thing. And that really leads me into this conversation about, mental health. When was there a thing around mental health that caused you to a situation that you saw that caused you to go like, that's a thing. There's something going on there. Again, so you've got your HR and your safety background. So when does mental health kind of come into the picture?
Oh man, so it was with my last company, and I was the safety officer for this company, MAU Workforce Solutions, staffing company, and we were trying to solve a problem. Can't really remember what the problem was, but there was an HR lady there, Brooke, who I adore. I think she's amazing. And she said something to me about psychological safety. And I remember saying, "Oh man, I'm about to confess another personality flaw to you, David. I'm sorry." I remember making fun of her. I'm like, "Oh, stupid," just teasing her about it. But I started to think about it. I just started to think about it. I'm like, she's right. There's a whole psychological. It's like a curtain that covers us all the time, and it has to do with motives. It has to do with interests. It has to do with perspective. It has to do with all these psychological. They're really antecedents for what happens next, and they drive us. And I'm like, Brooke's right. She's right. I shouldn't have made fun of her. And, to this day, I should go back and apologize. I never apologize, but she was right. And it was shortly after that I saw a presentation from a fellow in Australia at the National Safety Council, and it really hit me hard then. And I'm like, there's this whole idea of distraction. Why are you distracted? And we talk about impairment, and it's usually with regard to, chemical impairment or alcohol or whatever. But, you can be so disturbed or grieved that you become impaired. And so I think these psychological elements are immensely important. And we talk about the fall hazards, we talk about machine guarding hazards, all these types of hazards that we have standards for, but the prevailing curtain covering all of us, there's not I guess you could say the general duty clause, but that's a real weak.
Yeah, that's at least here in the U.S. anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we need to start paying attention to it. And I'm starting to see tools out there. We've come up with our own in-house tools to try to come up with a language for it so people can identify. But I think we're at the very beginning of this discussion. And you and I have been talking about this a while. But I really think we're at the beginning.
I totally and absolutely agree with you. And thank you so much. I really want to give you credit for being honest about how you came to this, because I speak and have a podcast and book coming out about this topic, so I get to talk to a lot of folks who've been doing this stuff forever. And some of them, what occurs to me is some of them, it's as if they were born this way, and they just, oh yes, and psychological health and safety is, and they talk about it just in these glowing terms, but it's like they were born that way. And I don't get to talk to a lot of people who are honest to say, like, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But it's starting to make sense to me, because I believe, this is my opinion, I don't have any data to back it up, I believe that most people are like you, that they don't really, it's not like we were raised, they didn't talk about it in college or in high school or anything like this. It isn't a language that we have in this country, so people are learning about it, and it does come across as kind of foo-foo and kind of soft, and particularly for guys. I mean, that's the way we're value cultured. But it's good to hear people just say, I didn't get it, but, as I thought about it, because that in and of itself is the first step to recognizing the hazard. If you don't recognize that it's a thing at all, that's not a thing, then you'll never do anything about it. Those people, I recall a situation where a firefighter and I went to the same call. I came back and he didn't. And the months and months and months of conversation after the fact about what he did wrong. He should have done this. He should have done that. He should have done this. He should have done that. No, he did what the culture asked him to do. And it cost him his life. Anybody in his situation, based on his experience and background, would have done the same thing that he did. It's not his fault. It is the culture that we had at the time. And there's no use at this time going back and, oh, we shoulda, coulda, woulda. We all, I did something different because I was exposed to different things. That's what I knew at the time. But it's just really refreshing to be honest about this stuff and say, "Well, it sounds a little, but we're learning. We're getting better."
Well, we become awake to it. It's like it's something that's there. It is there. It's there. It's behind everybody. And but there's a lot of people that there's not an awareness to it. But something happens, and I hope something good happens. But a lot of times it's something bad happens, and they struggle. And then when you give them the language for it, pressure or whatever it is, their radar's tuned on to it. There's kind of they awake to it.
Yes, yes. So tell me a little bit about. And so this is really the heart of the matter. So tell me a little bit about this. So a little bit to level set this for folks who weren't in the room. Again, we were at an NSC event, and we were kind of having some side chat. And you hand me this little card. It's a blue card, and it says, "We got this thing going on called Safety EHD." And I go like, I had never heard of it before. I didn't really know what it meant, but you said it was mental health related, so I immediately perked up. So what is Safety EHD?
So it's an AI. It's an AI. It's a little startup company. It's about less than a year old. We've been running with it. It's a closed source API, or it's a closed source AI. Which means we've programmed the intelligence. So you think of ChatGPT or some of these others there's a lot coming into the market these days. Safety EHD is the safety version of that. So we've programmed the brain of it, and there's this whole technology AI thing is just a freight train coming at us, and it's coming fast, and it's evolving. And so I think even since when I talked to you back in September, things have changed. We're still alive. You can go and download the app and go to the website safetyehd.com. But really what we're doing is we're building about 30 different tools. Some of them are psychosocial related. And as we develop them and we plug them into the system, the goal is to put an agent in the center, or a bot that would help you seamlessly navigate through those tools, whether it be emergency preparedness or whether it be psychological. How am I feeling today? How productive do I feel today? That tool. Or I got a question about what I'm walking up to right now. I'm going to take a picture of it because I see things, but we're all constrained to our own perspectives. When you click that AI, and AI is not constrained. It just sees a lot more than what we see. And then it shows you what it's concerned about. Okay, I want to make a training for that. You click buttons. So the whole point of it, David, is to put, this as well as a gazillion other safety professionals out there. We're outnumbered. In a perfect world, we would be out there alongside every single one of the workers that are out there. But impossible. We're not omnipresent to do that. The goal with Safety HD is to have that resource at hand and to give the worker at the lowest level access to that safety expertise, to reduce pressure, to help.
Wow. I like I said, I didn't really know that much about what this process was, but it sounds like you're integrating the approach to these psychosocial hazards with the physical ones, with to try to almost give a person like a kind of safety manager in an app, to be with them because you can't be there all the time.
You're right. You're right. Imagine you're a subcontractor and you're framing a building, and you're out there on the corner. You got some buddies around you. You've come across a scenario that you're unsure about. Maybe you don't feel properly trained, or a number of different things. And you want some backup. Hopefully, you look to a safety manager to back you up. It's not always there. It's not that person. He or she's not always available or accessible. Pull out your safety. This is the ideal usage. Pull up the app, just take a snapshot, and it helps you articulate your concern. It helps you validate your concern, and then raise awareness and say, "Hey, I'm not ready," or whatever words you use that describe why the task it's not good for you right now. You don't feel trained. You're not ready. It's words. It's language.
Yes, yes. So the definition of a psychosocial hazard that I created in my research is that a psychosocial hazard is a psychosocial factor perceived or experienced by the person exposed as threatening to them to the extent it causes them to change their behavior. And that is any and everything that causes me to stop and think about it or not feel comfortable, or it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't, the international standard has a list of like 88 specific things. It doesn't have to be on a list someplace. It's just, for me right now, something doesn't feel right. And what I really, really is exciting about what you're doing is giving permission in the system for people to second guess what's going on. It's okay. We planned it to be this way, but things happen. And if it doesn't feel right, you've got an assistant, something to help you work through that. But because what we would have done back in the day is simply just do it. I just push through, figure it out, push through your feelings. And our brain you said something earlier about AI sees more than we do. AI processes more than we do because our brains are able to process 11 million bits of information per second. It just can't process all of them at the same time. It sees all that stuff and it says, look, if it's not going to harm me, I'm not worried about it. I'm focused on the 40 or 50 things that might harm me.
Well, you said it, David. You said permission. You said the word permission. How sad it is that we have to have permission. When something deep down says, caution, caution, we're looking for permission. It's kind of sad that that's the way it is, but it's true. And the aim is to give people the resource, to just give them the resource, to validate their concern. And then hopefully they have the material to raise the concern. Because a lot of times they just go through with it unknowing and they get hurt. Oftentimes they don't get hurt, but a lot of times they do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's the analogy about the Swiss cheese, yeah, because sometimes those holes line up and somebody does get seriously injured or killed, So this process, this app you all have been using it for about a year or a little bit longer? Or?
Yeah, so the company I'm with, Stout Building Contractors, we were fortunate to get the beta. And so we were tinkering with it when it was crashing and, doing all kinds of, and then eventually, we worked the bugs out and it started, the first application worked. We're like, right on, keep it going. Next application starts work. The safety advisor starts working, and then we put it into market. It hit the app stores around September, October timeframe. And we're not just using it it's our customers are in construction, some are in agriculture, we got manufacturing, so we're growing, it's getting bigger and bigger, and we're learning as we go, and we're starting to figure out, well, we need more than just little applications that you manually go into. We need the bot, the agent that helps you seamlessly go through all of them. And so that's in development now. It's kind of exciting where this is going to go.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, but if you think about it, somebody had to again, going back to my fire rescue days, I remember hanging off the side of a, of a it was a training tower with a big metal hook. We just hooked in. We didn't have 3 and 4 point harnesses and all this other. We didn't have any of that. We were going with the old school. Somebody had to develop that harness. Somebody had to figure out how to have pre-installed anchor points for high places. Somebody had to figure out, and this is just, again, on particularly on the psychological side, because I think that's where this has the greatest impact, is it helps the person process what's going on around them. It will likely help them make better physical decisions, but they got to be able to process what's going on in their mind at the time. I mean, a person who doesn't see this as a fall hazard probably isn't going to think about fall protection because they don't think, like, what's the big deal? So again, you got to recognize the hazard first, and then how am I going to deal with the hazard that, if you can eliminate it, great, that's wonderful, but you can't eliminate all hazards.
No,
Impossible.
no. It's the hazards are going to be there, and the other thing is, we in the safety world, we try to have this perfection target. We're like, our goal is to eliminate all fill in the blank, death in the workplace, or whatever. We're talking about human beings that are imperfect. I think one of our defining characteristics is we learn by mistakes, and so I think what our objective really needs to be is to reduce the hazard, and make it so we're making the best decisions possible. One of the components of safety EHD that's slated down the road. You can't do it all at once. Is a tool that helps people where you can self-diagnose. Okay, so you're coming to work. You've had a fight with your teenage son or whatever. There's life happens, right? You're driving to work. You're upset about that, and you get a speeding ticket because you're in a rush. You're late. And now you're really angry, and you arrive at work. And how prepared are you psychosocially to go ahead and execute in a potentially dangerous environment? Well, there's no language for that. Okay, so we've come up with a language we call the very perfect and ideal utopian state of where you're fully focused, fully motivated, fully engaged, you're awake. We call that Zengaged. That is Zen, and you're engaged. Zengaged. Okay. Well, you can be higher than Zengaged. I talked to a kid last summer that was getting married, and he came into work, and he's getting married on Saturday, and it was Thursday, and I'm like, "How are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I'm up above Zengaged," and I'm like, "Okay." He's distracted good. He's happy. He's all is well, but where's his head at? Getting married. But you can also be dealing with that fight with your son and the ticket that you just got. Now you're distracted bad. You're way below Zengaged. And you can be so upset that you're impaired. Not from alcohol or marijuana or some substance or whatever. You're not there mentally. It might not be good for you to be at work that day. And so that's one of the tools I'm really excited about, that I think really plays into the heart of what you're trying to do, David. And that's the one I'm really excited about putting in.
Wow. 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 So oh boy, this is really exciting to hear. Again, as I think about the journey that I've been on having these conversations with people. When I first started, I wondered if anybody was cared about this topic. I tend to stumble into stuff and find myself being the only person who really cares about it because I'm kind of curious. But it is just so really exciting to hear. And again, to hear people who are coming at this, and you're an HR guy, you're a safety guy, you're not a psychologist or anything like that, but you're taking your background and what you do know about human beings and about safety and going, look, this is an issue, it's a hazard. We just got to figure out how to solve it. So let's figure out how to let's use a little technology, let's use some training. It's an issue, and ultimately, is it going to create an environment so the people that I want to work with are going to be able to do that better? Because ultimately, that's what's create this environment where people are able to do the things that we want to do together. We don't want to miss out because and maybe they can come to work today but shouldn't be doing that particular job. Maybe we got something else for them to do today. They don't need to be doing that thing today because that thing is going to require something that they don't necessarily have.
Well, that's true. I mean, and David, I mean, I look to the future. I look to the future, and I hope. I mean, we talk about SOPs and documents and mapping out processes and everything, and we've got safety rules and standards and everything. I hope at some point in the future we're so good at this. We have a language for this that when the older gentleman shows up, that's wife just passed away, that was married for 40 years and is just distraught, and his bereavement, he's kind of at that point where he's done being bereaved. He wants to migrate back into the routine of work because he needs that, but still grieving. I hope we have an SOP for that, and that's where we need to be so good at the psychosocial. We got to be able to say what's going on. He's grieving, and this is what we do to help him be productive. We're gonna have it someday.
You know what? I I believe I am convinced that as a species, anything that we really prioritize, we can get done. We can. We can. It's just got to be important. It's got to be important. So as we as we close the conversation, if there are folks out there, they're in HR, they're in safety, they're in construction, they have heard something that has really kind of like, whoa. Um, and they want to learn more about Safety HD, about what your company's doing. They want to contact you. What's the best way to do that?
Share. I, I would love it if you shared my information. On, on how to reach me. I'll give you my email, and they can go to Safety HD's website if they're interested in the tool for their company. There's a company instance that they can follow. If they're interested in just having it for themselves or sharing it with their workers, you can download the app and use it for 7 days for free as a trial. Or you can get a subscription. It's I think it's the lowest level subscription is $20 a month, something like that. That's 100. That's pretty cheap. It's pretty cheap. And if it saves you from getting hurt or your coworkers from getting hurt, it's really cheap. Well, worthy investment. I love to talk about this. This is a topic I'm passionate about. I hope you got that sense when we had a good chat. I can talk about it all day. I think people are starting to become aware that this is important. It's a factor that we have to recognize it. And we have to, as a safety leaders, we have to start coming up with the tools for it. I hope OSHA recognizes it. I mean, OSHA's having their own moment right now where they're saying, where do we go from here? We've been doing this since 1970s. What's next? How do we quit killing 5,000, 4,500 people a year? We've kind of plateaued. what's the next thing? I think OSHA's hunting for it right now, and other groups are trying to pitch in and help them and direct. And I think this is it. What you're doing is it.
Okay, OSHA, whoever else might be listening, I know what it is. I seriously, I am absolutely convinced that the extent to which you can identify, assess, and mitigate psychosocial hazards, all the other stuff's a lot easier. Because that's where it all starts. I got to know it's a thing. I got to know how it's affecting me. And then we can figure out, because we tend to skip the first two and jump to a solution. So what is the hazard that we're trying to address and protect? Let's figure that out first, because if we can do that, a lot of these solutions become just a lot simpler. Because there's lots of really neat fixes out there for things, but I think sometimes people bring out the hammer when they probably need a screwdriver.
Right. Kill a fly with a sledgehammer.
Exactly right. Rob, it's been a pleasure learning more about your journey, about safety HD. It's just this is exciting. It really is.
We got to keep talking about it, though.
Absolutely.
We got to push it in front of people. We got to keep talking.
Absolutely. I based on my conversations with you, I think you will, and I know I will. So, yeah, absolutely. So again, thanks very much for the conversation. And if you're watching or listening to this podcast for the first time, welcome. I hope something that you've heard will bring you back to a future episode. Previous episodes can be found at psychhealthandsafetyusa.com. You can watch, subscribe, or share the podcast on the Flourish DX YouTube page. And please do join the Psych Health and Safety USA movement by connecting and becoming a subscriber on LinkedIn. So until next time, stay tuned. Look out for the next episode of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. Tune in each week for new episodes of the Psych Health and Safety USA podcast. If you have a story or know of one that needs to be told, reach out to us on LinkedIn or send an email to david@id2-solutions.com or go to the Flourish DX website at flourishdx.com. We'll see you next time.